Before, we had to actually literally fix errors within our data set because it was more of a formatting issue. Literal values were missing. But let's say, I'm not spelling a word correctly, or my organization calls a certain characteristic something that may be slightly different or differently formatted than what WQX expects. And that's where validating errors after importing a file comes into play. So let's go ahead and do an example of just that. So I'm going to create a new data set. And I'm not going to go through and show you what the file looks like. You've already seen it enough. I'm just going to go ahead and import my file of activities and results because the main focus of this is going to be to show you how do you make changes within your data after importing and make WQX Web work with your data set rather than you going back into Excel and fixing the errors. So let's go errors to fix after import. And hopefully I have this set up correctly so it'll look nice. So you can already see we have some coming up here. Okay, so you can see we have 133 errors. We have no warnings and 7 messages. And let's look in the log and see what we see here and what's going on exactly. I'm going to click on the summary because I just want to get a general gist as to what's going on. Okay, so we have the wrong activity type listed. We have an invalid characteristic name. We have a number of invalid monitoring locations. We also have an invalid project ID as well. So what's going on there? I know that these values are already in WQX because I submitted those monitoring locations just a while ago. So let's return back to the main dataset summary page. And you see we have this validation errors box. Now this is where the magic happens when it comes to actually modifying your values within WQX or creating what we call a translation. So let's start by clicking on invalid domain values. And this is the area, once this loads up, this is where we will change that formatting in your value that's within your data set. So your data set says field measurement, but we really want it to say field measurement observation. And you do that just by clicking on the actual hyperlink value, changing it to what you want, clicking save, and it'll remove itself from the invalid domain value list. So let's do just that. I'm going to click on field measurement, and I want it actually to say field MSR/OBS, and you can see how little nuances like that can throw a lot of errors. The characteristic name is going to be discharge velocity, so let's see what I have here. So I'm just going to type in a partial characteristic name. And you can see it's actually velocity dash discharge. So that's okay. Let's fix that up. I know I have a blue 2, so I don't know why that threw an error. Let's see what happened here. So it said blue 2. Well, actually I should look for it because I have so many monitoring locations. So let's just type in the word blue. Waiting for it to load here. Okay, oh, I see. So I wrote blue 02, whereas in WQX Web, it just says blue 2. So let's make that translation as well. And you can see it's already changing itself. So same deal with the red. The red 01 is actually just a red 1. So let me type this in, the monitoring location ID of red. So we'll do red 1. And then project ID is water quality study, but I know I have a water quality study, so let's see what I have. I'll just type in the WQ, see what comes up. Oh, you can see a lot of things have water quality associated with it. So water quality study. Oh, okay, so the water quality study project actually does not have a space in it. And so you can see here I've now fixed all of these errors. I'm going to click Save. And they have now disappeared from the domain value resolution page. Let's click Return. All right, so you can see that we have 46 initial invalid domain values, and now none of them are unresolved. So that means that they are all fixed. So let's go ahead and revalidate those changes using the rules that we just set by fixing these validation errors. And this can be a deceiving page because once you click revalidate changes, it doesn't have like a refresh button or anything, but that's okay. Okay, so you can see here we still have one activity that's invalid. So what's going on here? Let's click on the invalid formatted value. Oh, you know what? Check it out. We have one activity start date that's not properly formatted. And you know what? I'm feeling a little lazy. I don't want to go back into my data set and fix that. So let me just change it right here. So we're going to do month, day, year. So it's June 14th, so 06, 14, 2008. So I'm just going to fix that right here. So you can click save, watch it disappear, or I can just click return. I can fix it, just click return, and that'll save it and bring me back to this page. And you can see we now have no unresolved errors within this data set. Let's revalidate the changes one more time. And again, being a little deceitful, but look what we have now. We started with 133 errors. None of our activities or results are valid, but we have then come down to 0 invalid, 20 new, none of them are existing. All of our activities and results are valid. I understand it's deceiving that these errors list still shows, but again, what's important is what is invalid and what's not invalid. You can see our total numbers of activities matches our total number of new. We have zeros across the board for unresolved and invalid. So this file is ready to be submitted. And what we can do, just like monitoring locations and projects, export and submit the files, click continue, and voila. Now, let me back up a little bit. So we made all of those changes in that data set, but where did all those changes go? So this is a wonderful part about WQX Web, and it also kind of touches back on the point of import configurations. So I made all of those changes once, but let's say for some, maybe your database export, or you just like naming things a specific way. We already set those translations in the data set that threw all those errors, so you can keep using that terminology, and WQX Web will automatically associate those values with the values we just defaulted. Now, what the heck do I mean by that? So let me go into our import configuration, our New Jersey presentation activities and results. And you'll now see that on the far right-hand side, I briefly touched upon translations during the previous topic. But now you can see that we have numbers associated with some of our columns. And let's just go down the line here. So for project ID, I have a translation, and what was that? So I click the add and edit link, and you can see that water quality study with a space is now associated with the water quality study without the space, or the term that we want it to be associated with. Or, you can even do this manually within your import configuration if you are expecting these values to become invalid. So you can just say, I'm going to have like a water quality, or, let me think of a project. Project 1. How about project 12? Click on none, and I say every time my data set says project 12, I actually want it to say, let me just see if there's a project. I actually want it to say project 2. And so there, every time my data set says project 12, I mean project 2. So I just wanted to show how to add a translation manually rather than doing it after an import. But you can see any translations or error validations you do within the dataset summary page, which we were just visiting, it is automatically saved to your import configuration. So those are then saved for as long as you possess that import configuration, which means that these translations will always be applied moving forward. So it's kind of it's a scenario where it may take you a little bit longer to validate your errors, to create your translations the first time around, but the second time you import your file, all of those translations will already be set. all of the validation rules, all of your nomenclature will be set correctly, and it'll, hypothetically, it will go through smoothly. So let's just go back and quickly go through the rest of our translations. Monitor and location ID, if you remember that red 1, I think, yeah, so red 1, blue 2 had the leading 0. So we just, associated those with the correctly imported monitoring locations. Let's see what else we did. I know we did one characteristic name. Now, this is where I do the bulk of my translations. I tend to let an organization keep their nomenclature for how they call their characteristics. But again, I like to look them up and then create them within this page. So, for example, if somebody within your org calls dissolved oxygen DO, and that's all, we can just click on that characteristic name. A search box will come up. I'll just say, okay, dissolved O. So we have dissolved oxygen DO. So now every time my data set column cell for characteristic name says DO, I want it to actually be associated as dissolved oxygen. And I just added that manually in no time at all. And keep scrolling down here. What else we got? Looks like that's all of our translations. We have an activity type translation we already created as well. And again, that's field measurement to field MSR OBS. So I know I may have overkilled that, but I think it's important to kind of drive home the point that you do not necessarily have to match WQX nomenclature, terminology, order exactly how it should be. We can have WQX Web do that associations for you. So it's another reason not to discourage you from creating your own format and maybe perhaps breaking away from the template or using the template order but not necessarily using the exact terminology. Does anyone have any questions about translations, validating errors before or after importing a file, or anything along those lines?